Welcome to another deep dive today.
hmm
Today we're going to be looking at Pegasus Spyware.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is one of those things that sounds like it's right out of a spy film.
Yeah.
But the reality is that based on what we've seen from the sources that we've been looking at,
hmm
it's something that affects anyone with a smartphone.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to be breaking down, exactly what Pegasus is, how it works, who's behind it, and what it means for your privacy,
For sure.
and your security
Yep.
in this digital age.
hmm
We're going to try to cut through all of the technical jargon and all of the confusing headlines and just kind of give you a good overview.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for everyone to understand this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, this isn't something that just affects, people who work in, intelligence agencies or whatever.
Yeah.
This is something that can affect anyone, and it's becoming more and more common.
Yeah. So to kick things off, maybe you can give us a high-level overview of what exactly Pegasus is.
Yeah. So Pegasus is a type of spyware, and it's a very sophisticated one.
Okay.
It's developed by an Israeli cyber intelligence firm called NSO Group Technologies.
NSO Group. Okay.
Yeah. And what sets Pegasus apart from your average run-of-the-mill spyware is that it can actually silently infect and gain complete control of a device without the user even knowing.
So you're saying I can have my phone in my pocket
Yeah.
and this thing can be on there
Yeah.
and I would have no idea.
Exactly. It can be completely invisible to the user.
So,
And the scary thing is that once it's on your phone,
right.
it can do pretty much anything.
What are we talking about here? How much control are we talking about?
I mean,
it's scary to even ask.
I know it is kind of scary to think about, but we're talking complete control.
Okay.
Access to your text messages, emails, calls, even encrypted chats on apps like WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram.
Wow. So even those encrypted chats
Yeah, even those.
that I think are safe.
Right. It can bypass that encryption. And on top of that, it can activate your microphone and camera remotely.
Oh, my gosh.
So basically, your phone becomes a surveillance device without you even knowing.
So it's like someone's listening in.
Exactly. And they can see you, too.
And they can see me.
It can also steal your passwords, track your location through GPS. It's really...
That's kind of a nightmare scenario.
It is, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it's happening.
So, okay, so this NSO group,
Yeah.
what is this organization?
So they were founded in 2010.
Okay.
And they're headquartered in Herzliya, Israel.
Okay.
And their stated mission is to, provide governments with the technology to combat terrorism
Okay.
and serious organized crime.
Okay, so
Right, so they...
it sounds almost noble.
Yeah.
We're going to give you these
Good
tools.
folks, good guys. Right.
We're going to give you these tools to help fight crime.
Right.
But it sounds like maybe
Yeah.
in practice, it's not really working out that way.
Right. No, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay.
So they claim that they only sell Pegasus to vetted government agencies,
Okay.
like intelligence agencies, law enforcement, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
But there's been a lot of evidence to suggest that it's being used for
For more than that?
a lot more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another interesting thing is that because they're an Israeli company,
Uh-huh.
the export licenses for Pegasus are actually approved by Israel's Ministry of Defense.
So the government is involved
Yeah, so there's a sort
in
of...
deciding where this goes.
Yeah, there's a sort of connection there between the proliferation of this technology and Israel's own, security interests.
Okay, so it's not just like a company doing its thing.
Right.
It's like
A bit more.
there's some government involvement.
There's a bit more to it than that.
Okay, so we talked about how this is being used
Yeah.
to target maybe people who aren't criminals.
Right.
Or terrorists or whatever.
So there have been reports of Pegasus being used against journalists, human rights activists, political opponents, lawyers, dissidents,
Wow, so they're using this to silence people?
to spy on people who they see as a threat,
Okay.
even if those people aren't actually,
Right.
criminals.
They're just
That's
critics
just critics.
of the government.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So this has obviously caused a lot of concern
A lot of concern. Yeah.
internationally,
Absolutely.
in terms of
Yeah.
privacy, freedom of speech.
Right. Because, who gets to decide
Right.
what constitutes a legitimate threat
Right.
and what safeguards are in place to prevent abuse, right?
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that the way Pegasus infects devices has gotten
Yeah,
more sophisticated over time.
it has. Yeah.
How has that happened?
So initially, Pegasus was spread through what we call spear phishing,
Okay.
which is basically sending targeted messages
Uh-huh.
often through email or SMS,
Yeah.
that are designed to trick the user into clicking a malicious link.
Okay, I've definitely gotten those before.
Yeah,
Luckily, I didn't click on them.
yeah, most people have.
But then around 2018,
Yeah.
things changed.
Things took a much scarier turn,
Okay.
which was the introduction of what we call zero-click exploits.
Zero-click exploits.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Basically, it means that the user doesn't even have to do anything to get infected.
So I don't even have to click a link.
You don't even have to click a link.
It just happens.
It just happens.
Oh, wow, that's scary.
It's pretty scary. Yeah.
So how does that work?
So these exploits take advantage of what are called zero-day vulnerabilities.
Zero-day vulnerability.
Yeah, so these are basically like flaws or weaknesses in software that are unknown even to the software developers themselves.
So like Apple and Google don't even know about these.
They don't even know about them, yeah.
Wow.
And so NSO Group, they invest a lot of money in either discovering or acquiring these vulnerabilities.
Okay.
And then they develop ways to exploit them.
Okay.
And install Pegasus on a device without any interaction from the user.
Wow. That's
crazy.
Scary stuff.
Okay, so can you give us some specific examples of like how these zero-click exploits have been used?
So one of the most well-known examples is a vulnerability that was found in WhatsApp in 2019.
Okay.
And this allowed Pegasus to be installed on a phone just through a missed WhatsApp call.
So I wouldn't even have to answer the call.
You wouldn't even have to answer the call.
And
it could still infect your phone.
Wow. So it's like my phone's ringing, I ignore it, and I've just been infected.
And you've been infected.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. There have also been many instances of Pegasus exploiting weaknesses in Apple's iMessage system.
iMessage, okay.
Yeah. So again, without the user doing anything, they can just install the spyware.
Wow.
And then this is like next level stuff.
It is, yeah. It's good.
We're not just talking about clicking on a link
No.
in a phishing email anymore.
It's a whole different ball game now.
This is serious stuff.
Yeah.
So once this thing is on your phone,
right,
how does it stay hidden?
So Pegasus operates at what's called the kernel level of the operating system.
Okay.
And the kernel is basically the core of the system.
Okay.
It controls all the fundamental functions of your phone.
Uh-huh.
And so by being embedded at that level,
Right.
Pegasus gets really deep access.
Okay.
And it can evade detection by most security software.
So it's like...
because it's working at such a low level. It's basically invisible.
Like a rootkit almost.
Yeah, it's very similar to a rootkit.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's also designed to cover its tracks.
Okay.
It'll delete any evidence of its activity.
Wow.
And resist any attempts to remove it.
So it's like, it's really trying to stay on there?
It's designed to be persistent.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's a pretty advanced piece of technology.
So who's they been targeting with this?
So there's a lot of information that's come out from investigations by organizations like Amnesty International, Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto, and the Pegasus Project.
Pegasus Project.
Which was a collaboration of journalists from around the world.
Okay.
And they've uncovered a lot of evidence of Pegasus being used against a variety of people.
Okay, so like what kind of people are we talking about here?
So we're talking about journalists, human rights activists, political opponents, lawyers, dissidents.
Wow, so anyone who might be a threat.
Anyone who might be perceived as a threat
to the
government.
To a government.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just like terrorists and criminals or whatever.
No, it's being used much more broadly than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are there any specific examples of like high-profile people?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of evidence to suggest that associates of Jamal Khashoggi, the Saudi journalist who was murdered, had their phones infected with Pegasus.
Wow.
Both before and after his assassination.
Oh, my gosh.
There's also been reports that heads of state, government officials, including people like French President Emmanuel Macron, were potential targets of Pegasus.
I mean, the fact that they're going after like world leaders is
pretty alarming.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like you said, human rights defenders, lawyers, journalists all over the world.
Right. And that raises a lot of concerns about, freedom of the press.
Yeah.
The ability of journalists to do their work safely.
Exactly.
Without fear of being monitored.
Yeah, because if you know someone's listening to all your conversations and reading all your emails, that's going to have a chilling effect.
It's going to make it very difficult for them to do their jobs.
On your work.
Absolutely.
Okay, so obviously this has caused a lot of backlash. What kind of fallout has there been?
So there have been investigations, lawsuits,
Okay.
even some bans in certain countries.
Okay.
Apple, for example, filed a lawsuit against NSO Group
Wow.
in 2021, calling them amoral 21st century mercenaries.
Yeah.
Meta, the parent company of WhatsApp, also sued NSO
Okay.
back in 2019 over the WhatsApp exploit.
So they're being taken to court
They're facing some legal challenge.
over this.
Yeah.
Have any governments taken action?
Yeah, so the United States
Wait.
blacklisted NSO Group in 2021,
Yep.
adding them to the Commerce Department's entity list.
Okay.
And this basically restricts their access to UX technology.
Wow.
And the U.S. government cited concerns that NSO's activities were contrary to U.S. national security
Okay.
or foreign policy interests.
So even the U.S. government is like,
Yeah,
this is bad.
they're taking it seriously, yeah.
Okay.
And there have also been inquiries and investigations at the EU level and in individual EU member states like Hungary, Spain, and France.
Okay.
And in countries like India and Mexico, there have been calls for independent investigations.
Okay.
So there's definitely a lot of scrutiny on them right now.
So it sounds like they're,
Yeah. Under the microscope?
yeah, they're in hot water.
They are. Yeah.
But despite all of that, is Pegasus still being used?
It seems like it is.
Okay.
Although it's definitely under a lot more scrutiny now.
Okay.
And NSO Group has reportedly been facing financial difficulties,
Oh, wow.
layoffs, declining revenues.
So maybe they're not doing so well
Maybe they're not doing so well. Maybe this is,
as a result of all this.
yeah, maybe this is the beginning of the end for them.
Okay.
Now we'll see.
But even if they do go away,
Right.
this problem's not going away.
No, the problem's not going away.
It's not just NSO.
Right. NSO is not the only player in this game.
Right.
There are other companies out there like Candiru, Citrox, Intellexa,
Wow. And they're all
and they're all developing similar tools.
developing.
Yeah, with zero-click infection capability.
Wow. So this is like a whole
It's a whole industry.
industry.
Yeah, and it's an industry that operates in a very murky legal area.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to regulate.
Yeah, because it's like,
Yeah.
what are the rules here?
It's hard to say.
If the government's buying it
Yeah.
and then using it
Exactly.
against their own people.
Yeah, who's going to stop them?
Right.
It's a tough question.
So this is like a bigger picture issue
It's a huge issue.
than just this one company.
Yeah, it's about the increasing surveillance capabilities of governments
Okay.
and the lack of transparency and accountability.
Right. And it's kind of scary because like
It is scary. Yeah,
we live in a digital world now
we do.
and so much of our lives
Yeah.
are online.
Right.
And
Everything we do is tracked in some way.
right. And so if governments have access to these tools
Right.
and there's no oversight,
Yeah.
it's a scary thought.
It's very concerning.
So is there anything
Yeah.
that the average person can do?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
It's very difficult to detect Pegasus
Okay.
because, like we talked about, it's designed to be stealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some organizations,
Okay.
like Amnesty International and Citizen Lab,
Okay.
that have developed forensic techniques
Mm.
to try and identify traces of Pegasus.
Okay.
But these techniques are very technical.
Yeah.
They involve analyzing system logs,
Mhm.
crash reports,
Right.
things that most people wouldn't even know how to look at.
Yeah.
So for the average person, it's
Okay.
really difficult.
So is there anything? we
I
can-
mean, there are some things you can do.
Okay.
They're not foolproof,
Uh-huh.
but they can help.
Okay.
So keeping your devices updated is
Okay.
important.
So those software updates?
Yeah, those software updates, they often include security patches
Okay.
that can fix these vulnerabilities. You also want to be very careful about clicking on links
Right.
or opening attachments.
Even if it looks like it's from someone you know.
Even if it looks like it's from someone you know, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's very easy to spoof email addresses.
Okay.
Things like that.
And then the encrypted messaging apps.
Yeah.
You said that they're not
They're not foolproof,
foolproof, but
but they're better than nothing.
they're better than nothing.
Right.
Okay, so
So it's still a good idea to use them.
it's good to use those.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, the reality is,
mhm.
if a government really wants to get into your phone,
Yeah.
they probably can.
It's like
Yeah.
nothing is 100% secure.
Nothing is 100% secure.
Okay, so it's kind of a scary thought.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
But I think it's important to be aware of the risks
Yeah,
and take whatever precautions you can.
right.
But also, I think it's important to have a conversation about,
Yeah,
what kind of surveillance powers
Mm.
governments should have.
exactly. Because like, what are
Yeah.
the limits here?
What are the limits? Yeah.
Because it's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope.
If we just allow governments to have access
Yeah,
to these tools
exactly.
and use them against anyone they want,
Right.
then
Yeah.
where does that end?
Oh, where does it end?
Yeah, that's a
It's a tough question.
really important question.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just to kind of recap everything,
Yeah.
we've learned that Pegasus is this really sophisticated
Yeah.
spyware that can
Very powerful.
completely take over your
Well,
phone.
Yeah.
It was developed by NSO Group,
Yeah.
but it's been used against all sorts of people,
Right.
not just criminals and terrorists.
Exactly.
And it's really hard to detect and defend against.
Very difficult. Yeah.
So I think the takeaway here
Yeah.
is that we really need to be having a conversation
Yeah.
about,
We need to be having a conversation
yeah,
about the balance
the
between
balance between,
security and privacy.
right, because
Yeah.
we all want to be safe,
Of course.
but we also want to
But we also want to be free.
be free
Yeah.
and have our privacy respected.
Exactly.
And so it's
It's a tough balance to strike,
yeah,
but it's an important one.
it's a really important one.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
this is something that everyone should be thinking about,
Absolutely.
not just
Yeah.
governments and
Just the experts.
experts.
Yeah. This is something that affects all of us.
Yeah, this is something that affects all of us. And
Yeah.
it's only going to become more important
I think so.
as technology continues to advance.
Yeah. As technology gets more powerful,
Yeah,
these issues are just going to get more and more complex.
yeah. And so it's something we need to be talking about now.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this has been a really interesting
Yeah.
conversation.
It's been a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it has. I've learned a lot.
I've learned a lot too.
And I hope our listeners have as well.
I hope so too.
So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time
See you later.
for another deep dive. Bye.